everybody. My name's Maralee Burnett. I am your astrologer, back with messages for the last week in October. Unbelievably, we only have 2 months left in this year. And as usual, things look spicy and interesting and crunchy, and yeah, we're going to break it all down. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of this content, make sure you click on that subscribe button now. That way you get notifications every time I post new content. I post content weekly on YouTube, and I also post it daily, whether you follow me on TikTok or Instagram or again, YouTube Shorts. I pull a tarot card every day, and from that message, I sprinkle in a little bit of astrology as well. So you want to be sure that you're checking that out by subscribing to my channel. You also want to make sure you are a part of my website. So go to maraleeburnett.com, register there. That way you get access to all of my written content, which I will email out to you. Each month I create a monthly horoscope, as well as a new moon and full moon article. I have worksheets for the new moon, all kinds of weekly updates. So I'm doing my best with a lot of free resources to keep you tuned in and prepared for the crazy that's in store as we start to wrap up the end of this 9-year. So with that, of course, we're going to break this down day by day, starting with Monday, October 27th, using my Astro Gold software, which you can even download on your App Store application and follow along if you would like to play mini astrologer for yourself. It's a really good tool, not very expensive, and it's a great way, again, to tune in. And it's probably a little bit more consistent than some of the AI tools out there because an actual astrologer created it for you. And I get nothing for that. I'm just saying I do really enjoy the tool and the predictions. And so if that's something that interests you, go out there and check it out as well. With that, let us get started with, of course, Monday, October 27th. And it seems like, if you've been following me, that every week the Monday is so intense. And this one does not fail to deliver on the intensity scale either. So we are off and running. Now, if you haven't done so yet, you can always listen to last week's session and get caught up and see how the energy's been showing up for you. But as we kick off Monday, we're seeing some of the carryover of energies that started last week as well. So we're just going to do a quick rundown of what we've been talking about. And probably the biggest energy has been the formation of this grand water trine. Now, a grand trine is created by 3 planets that are creating trines to one another, all at the same degrees. So we have Mars and we have Mercury in Scorpio, stirring things up, exposing things that at one point were hidden, not so much anymore. And they speak in harmony with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is in Cancer, very strong here, beginning to slowly slow down because it will go retrograde on 11/11, creating a very opportunistic portal for those that want growth as far as their feelings, their family, their intuition, their caring, their nutrition goes. And those all speak in harmony with that Saturn in the sign of Pisces energy as it gets ready to slowly tick back to 25 degrees. So this is a grand water trine because these are all water signs, all speaking harmoniously. Now, a trine means there is a major fated opportunity available to you, especially to those of you who have planets in these 22 to 28 degrees of the water signs. And the closer you are to the exact degrees of this, the bigger potential you have for something very emotionally fulfilling to be created for you. But you have to show up and work with the energy and let this unfold for you. Now, this is going to be around for quite some time because of the fact that Jupiter's slowing down, even Saturn's starting to slow down because it's getting ready to end its retrograde and And it's time in the sign of Pisces where we won't see it come back for almost 30 years. So this is a 30-year cycle about to come to a close. And of course, we have Neptune that has now stepped back into Pisces, its home sign, finishing the work that you've been doing for the last 14 years. And it's going to stay at this critical, intense, what I like to call a test of a degree the whole time. So we're going to be sitting with these lessons from Neptune's perspective, these dreams, these disillusions, these delusions that we need to dissolve one last time. So somewhere in your chart, in your life, there's been work showing up. Is it the past 3 years from Saturn? Is it the past 14 from Neptune? Is it both? Probably. And for the whole year of Jupiter in Cancer, the work is intense. So there's something about this opportunity that's tied to the past, tied to your dreams, and trying to help you create healthy boundaries and give you the information you need to create a pretty big opportunity. So that's, of course, some really great, incredible energy that we can lean into and help ourselves get in touch and create something beautiful. We also see continuing this square between Jupiter and Chiron. And this is very long as far as conflicts go. Now, there's a part of me that feels like this may be about the government shutdown. And why it concerns me, if it is because this isn't ending anytime soon. So, Chiron could be an unhealthy leader, a powerful leader that is basically in conflict with home and families. And because healthcare is a big topic, this again doesn't seem like this is going to end anytime soon. But of course, there's always an opportunity for someone to change and make it a difference, right, in this conflict. And so I am particularly interested in the fact that when Jupiter slows down to go retrograde on 11/11, something about this conflict changes. Something becomes bigger. We become more aware. It becomes more urgent that we figure out how to balance our needs with the needs of others. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that one for a while. And as far as new energies go today, we do have Venus in her home sign of Libra, speaking at what we call in conjunct, you may have heard it called quincunx, the North Node. So there are fated events involving women in justice or justice roles that are achieving their purpose in a way that's very difficult. Now, we here in Arizona happen to have one of our representatives that can't get sworn in. So maybe she finally will next week in an unusual way because of this connection between the North Node and Venus in the sign of Libra. Time will tell. The other weird thing going on, another inconjunct, which we see from these green lines, speaking of that Chiron energy, our personal wounds, the wounds to the self, a warrior, somebody who's on the attack, is speaking at that awkward angle back to Mars, ruler of the sign of Aries. So this is, while it's difficult, not direct, it still is something where Mars appreciates what Chiron's trying to do. And so even though they have to work some things out, there can be some action taken to heal a rift in some way on this day. And so for you, if you've been having health issues, for instance, you might come across some information that's going to help you on your healing journey, but it's not what you would expect. So just be open-minded to whatever is going to show up for you on this day. So that's, as usual, just a few little things to get us started on Monday. All right, so then let's take a look at Tuesday. And as we head into Tuesday, again, we're not going to see a whole lot of things changing and shifting, but what changes on Tuesday and can make things difficult is the moon moves through the sign of Capricorn. And as it does, it is creating a brief T-square between that Chiron and that Jupiter energy that we talked about on Monday. So whatever is difficult that becomes emotional, it is likely something to do with the government, because we're talking about Capricorn energy, which is very much aligned with the government's energy. And so again, government's making some choices that are not good for families and what they're hoping for. And it is really figuring out how we can take care of our own health and not rely on the government and not rely on other people. There's something that we have to take charge of for ourselves in order to resolve this conflict and this pressure that comes up pretty strong on Tuesday. The other thing we see on Tuesday that could maybe help us heal, give us the information that we need to resolve the conflict, is Mercury at the last degree of Scorpio is speaking in harmony with Neptune. Now, I really want you paying close attention here on Monday and Tuesday to what is showing up for you, because in November, at that new moon in Scorpio, which is crazy, in 19th, 20th, depending on where you're located, this Mercury energy will be conjunct the sun, so it's Cazimi, conjunct the moon, so it's a new moon, Mercury Cazimi retrograde. So there is some detail, some information, some secret from the past that is going to be exposed. And as it's exposed, we can finally have a new beginning. But it will be one that we start moving towards very slowly, because of the fact that Mercury is going to remain retrograde after that new moon until it finishes and then starts heading forward again. And as it heads forward again, that's when we'll fully understand the work and what we need to do going forward. So it's Monday, Tuesday, maybe even Sunday before this, that we're going to start getting some clues, some downloads. It could just even be a feeling, but something big, information-wise, secret-wise, is coming up. It's getting exposed, but don't overreact to it quite yet, because there's much more to be seen. And whatever happens this week, it will shock you when we have that new moon in Scorpio next month. So just take note, but be aware, because I just think it's going to shock the heck out of us. Whatever it is, I just keep hearing in my mind, mind blowing. This is mind blowing. So those of you who have 28 degree Scorpio energy, in particular, be prepared for this area of your chart to be blown up, right? This is Mercury with the sun. It's Cazimi. The Mercury energy is being baptized, right, by the sun. And it can be a big aha moment. It can be very anxiety inducing. It just depends on how you deal with this kind of energy. But I expect it to be, like I said, big, shocking event that we never saw coming. And then we have to take our time in how we're going to fully respond to it, because it's going to take some time and thought as we do respond to whatever this shocking event is, and new beginning. So shocking, surprising, unexpected new beginning that we get a preview of somewhere around Monday, Tuesday of this week. But it's Scorpio. So remember, Scorpio's things that are hidden beneath the surface. It's the underworld. It can have to do with money and power. And of course, we have Mars nearby, stirring up the pot, fueling the fire, right? Down beneath the underworld. So there can be attacks, whatever we end up doing. Like I said, it's going to be shocking, and there will be longer term repercussions. So we'll be talking more about that, but I do just want you to tune in and pay attention this week and see what is coming to your attention so that you understand the work that's coming up for you. Because like I said, it's a new beginning, but it's one that doesn't come about in any ordinary way for you. And of course, it depends on what planets this is touching on in your own chart, what's been coming up for you as a part of this Mercury pre-shadow work that is going on. So, of course, more to come on that, but look for Monday, Tuesday to be really eventful as Mercury starts touching off on this energy. All right, so let's move ahead to Wednesday. All right. As we get here to Wednesday, I mentioned, right, that we're going to see this grand water trine for some time. Still got Mars here activating it from the Scorpio perspective. And now, of course, we see Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. So Mercury's at fall in Sagittarius because the concepts are too big. Mercury's close to home, right? It's third house, community, not ninth house, foreign people, foreign countries. So there can be a conflict between us and a foreign country. There can be things that are flying through the air. This is, again, knowledge, information. Words get kind of aggressive because, of course, Sagittarius is a sign ruled by Jupiter. It has vast knowledge, but Mercury isn't prepared to grasp all the knowledge. And as it enters here, it is facing off with Uranus. Again, shocking information and surprises related to the past, because of course we have Uranus in retrograde. Also getting ready to transition back into Taurus, where there will probably quite a few financial surprises for us. So be flexible, control your spending so that you're not shocked and surprised by something not being what it appeared when you first considered it. But there is some opposition, there is some argument, like I said, between a leader who maybe has very strong Gemini energy and maybe a younger leader in a foreign country. So if you feel this conflict in your own life, your best bet is to be open to learning something new and not pretending that you know everything, because you don't, and just pushing back on whatever story somebody else is trying to tell you. It's time to sit back and consider what this tension is about instead of fighting over differences at this time. So that is going to come up pretty strong. And it's, of course, whenever we have the first quarter moon, which means since the new moon, now we have the moon squaring against the sun. This is a time to change and adjust since that new moon in Libra. If things are not going as expected, whether it's something legally, a relationship, there is a chance now to pause and change direction and consider other people's feelings, because we've got the moon in Aquarius, and make some changes if you're finding that there's a lot of conflict over contracts, again, conflicts in relationships, conflicts in boundaries, but there's something we want to pause and consider on this day. Now, it is a day where powerful agreements can be made. So the conflict is helpful because of the fact that Mercury also speaks in harmony with Pluto. So there's hope for us. Don't think this is just a battle that can't be won, but it is one where we have to unite and come together in order to resolve what the big conflict is all about. All right, that is Wednesday. As we move to Thursday, the conversations between Pluto and Mercury just continue. They build in strength because Mercury is getting ready to slow down to do its retrograde. So it has between now and 6 degrees of Sagittarius, and it will slowly cross over to those degrees before it goes retrograde. So keep in mind, everything that Mercury is showing us while it's pre-shadow is not complete yet. We will come back and revisit this conflict, but the conflict will be different because instead of being about information, it will be about money and values. Because at the time Mercury comes back and has the same opposition with Uranus, Uranus will be back in the sign of Taurus. So this is a really interesting time of shifting priorities and finishing up the work for these planets like Saturn, like Neptune, like Uranus, that have been slowly moving into new territory that we haven't seen in our lifetimes, but now they've gone back to help us finish the work that needs to be done so that we can finally move forward next year. And so we're in those phases of energy right now where it's time to wrap up old storylines. We have 2 months to finish the 9 years work, and it's going to speed up as we get there because it's urgent. We have to finish the work so we're not carrying it into 2026. So that is Thursday. As we move into Friday, we see that moon again now into the sign of Pisces. Happy here, intuitive, emotional, creative. Moon loves being in this fellow water sign. But as it moves in here, it is having that tense conversation. So another T-square, it's brief, but this can create some emotional outbursts as, again, Mercury still is in opposition with Uranus. That moon comes in and heightens the conflict, and there has to be a release point, an escape from the conflict, and we can get over emotional because of the conflict, or we can consider, again, how do we meet in the middle? How do we take control over our responses so that they're not over the top, overly emotional? So it's brief, but there's something we need to pay attention to on Friday so that it doesn't get out of hand and out of control, and we keep overreacting from a place of intense feeling. That is what we have to go on Friday. And then as we head on into Saturday, this is when we add a new T-square. So as I've mentioned, this is a crunchy, tense week because we have so much conflict that we are trying to manage. And today it is Venus that's, again, still in her home sign of Libra, that's now in opposition to that Chiron energy. So this can be a woman in a legal role who's in conflict with a leader, a coach, trainer, a warrior. And Jupiter here in the sign of Cancer is trying to get both of them to, instead of fighting with one another, consider the impact on everyone else if they continue to battle one another in this way. And Jupiter in Cancer, of course, is saying, hey, let's remember that we're all here to love one another, to care for one another, to take care of families. And there's some pressure throughout the weekend that we have to resolve if we want this to end peacefully. On Sunday, what we see changing is this Venus energy, of course, building. So this T-square, I should say, the T-square between Venus and Jupiter and Chiron just continues to build. But remember, a square between Venus and Jupiter is more about overindulgence. The fact that they're having difficult conversations with Chiron, our wounded self, is where we have to be careful we don't become too much of a drama queen and acting like the victim. Instead, we got to break free from that, and we have to focus on helping and healing other people in order to get this conflict resolved. So that is important to pay attention to. And the other thing is Venus is speaking at an odd angle to Saturn, of course, in the sign of Pisces. So there are relationships out there that are not healthy, that are not fair, that are not balanced. And it's through this lens of Saturn in Pisces that we're being taught that we have to make changes if we want to have relationships and contracts and agreements and commitments that are fair for all involved. So this could be, again, I still see Saturn in Pisces as things doing with the Pope, doing with religion as a whole, doing things with the conflict in and over the Gaza Strip. So there could be something that comes up importantly on Sunday, November 2nd. So here we are. We've finished the whole last week of October. We've headed into the month of November, and it's been a pretty difficult week that's been holding our attention the whole time. But remember, in these trines, there are opportunities out of the conflict that we want to take advantage of. So the conflict is serving a purpose, even though we don't necessarily know what that is quite yet. Don't be afraid of it. Don't escalate it. And then look for the silver lining that comes out as a result of it. And Sunday, when that moon moves through the sign of Pisces, speaking with Saturn, speaking with Neptune, that's where if we tune in and trust our feelings, our guides, our spirit guides, our angels, right, then they're showing us the way forward. All we have to do is show up and do our part. So that is the whole week. It's just kind of a lot of rinse and repeat and a shifting of players, but the energy does not really change in intensity the whole week. It just is on the entire week long. And then as we get into next week, we will start to see Mars move to 29 degrees of Scorpio, which again is intense. That's a test. Scorpio, the warrior energy with Mars there, stirring up things from beneath the surface, and in an opposition to that Uranus energy, which will, like I said, shift next week and go into the sign of Taurus. So this is going to be a big conflict all next week that is going to be definitely very intense in nature. And we'll see briefly part of the grand water trine fade away, but the connection between Saturn and Jupiter remains. So there are still the two heavy hitters, the teachers, who are banding together to create some necessary changes. And so we'll be looking at that. We're also going to see the full moon in the sign of Taurus. So you'll want to come back and see the breakdown for every sign as we look at that energy. So there's lots more to come. That'll be on Wednesday. And then as you've noticed, here's Mercury getting ready to slow down. So right after we have the full moon in Taurus, Mercury will slow down, and then that's when that retrograde will begin. And then we've got Jupiter going retrograde. We've got Venus moving into Scorpio. November is very, very dark, deep, intense as far as the energy goes. So, of course, you'll want to make sure you're here for it and click on that subscribe button so that we can break it all down, and make sure you're looking at your own chart. Where are these opportunities showing up for you? Where is there conflict? Where is there a need for balance? Where is there a need to meet in the middle? You'll want to be prepared, especially for that shocking, surprising new moon that will happen in Scorpio, like I said, 19th, 20th of November. So start preparing. Consider booking a session with me so we can take a look at what planets you have at 28 degrees, how they may be impacted, where will this big aha moment happen in your chart, all the things. There's so much going on through the rest of this year. And soon I'll have a bit of a preview out for you for 2026, which is a 1 year. It's time for new beginnings. But remember, as we introduce new things, I like to say it's like breaking in a new pair of shoes. It's a little uncomfortable because we aren't ready for it, but I'm going to help you get as ready as I can. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. I know I've been working with a lot of you lately because there's so much going on. And so thank you for your trust. Thank you for your continued support. And I look forward to talking to many more of you this week as well. All right, guys, take care. Thanks for liking. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for sharing my work. I really appreciate it. All right, we will talk next week. Bye now.